Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cycle Podcast. I have Cass or Cassandra with me today. We can call her either one. She doesn't mind. She lives just outside of Toronto in Canada, and we are going to chat with her about her story today. Cass, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I love sharing my story. It's so wild. And if it helps anybody, if people can commiserate with me, I've done my job.
It will help a lot of people. So thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, non-endo related?
Non-endo related. I'm 30. Well, it including my age is important because I'm 36. I'm living here in Hamilton, which is just outside of Toronto. I am a teacher, French teacher. I just recently went back to work online, of course. I'm a mama to a 1-year-old named Ellis, wife. What else? I'm an endo warrior, infertility warrior. I'm an adoptive mama. Yeah.
Well, we
had a wild life.
Yeah. Look forward to getting to know you more throughout this podcast today. Well, tell us about the beginning of your kind of endo story, maybe even when you started your period, or maybe you didn't have pain initially. How did things really kind of start for you before you even potentially knew you had endo?
I would say, to be honest, that it started when I got my period, because I remember at 15 years old going on the pill because I would have to stay home from school, because I would have to just cry myself to sleep in bed in order to get rid of the pain. So going on the pill really helped. It made my period lighter, obviously less cramps, but still pretty bad periods.
And you were missing school and things like that at a young age?
Absolutely, missing school, literally in the fetal position in bed, just taking Advil and going to sleep was the only cure.
Yeah, for sure. Did anyone at that point, were you just told this is normal? You just unfortunately one of those girls this?
Honestly, didn't even think anything of it. I just thought, okay, ooh, that's a really bad period, and doctors say, oh, if you go on the pill, it'll help.
Right.
You don't really even get that much well, nowadays you would, but back then you didn't get that much information.
No, was your doctor just here's the pill? Yeah,
absolutely. Here's your cure for your period. But as now in my 36th year, that you're not supposed to have a painful period. It's supposed to, you get your cramps and this and that, but most people experience horrendous periods, and that's not right. And they are just told, go on the pill, it'll help everything, and not knowing what you're putting into your body, A, and B, that it's just going to mask whatever it is you're going through. So
yeah, absolutely.
Didn't really appreciate that.
Well, so you start taking the pill and you're feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
Kind of happens. And you still have painful periods, but you're taking the pill. You're in high school.
Yeah. Into university, into life. And, it's just still bad period or bad pain but not as bad as it was before. Didn't think anything of it. And then 15 years later,
when you were 30.
Well, when I was 30, I went off the pill.
Okay.
And then when I went off the pill, I noticed it wasn't that bad. It was a gradual, it gradually got worse. And then I noticed this little, I would call it a nugget in my navel, in my belly button. So you could feel it. It was a little nodule, I guess you would call it, in my navel. And I was living in Korea at the time, South Korea, teaching English, and I would go to the doctor there, and they didn't speak English, and they would just give me some sort of medicine. Sorry, my dog is dreaming. And it didn't really help, but it was a painful little nugget in my belly button. So when I got back to Canada, I had it checked out, and by a walk-in clinic. And they were like, okay, we'll take it out, and then, we'll do a biopsy on it. So they did that, took it out, did a biopsy. The doctor said, and once again, this is just a walk-in. It could be an endometrioma, but it was benign, nothing serious. So I brought that information to my family doc.
So wait, you went to urgent care?
Yeah. Because
how did they remove it? It was like in your, like
and it was local. It was like literally like local anesthetic. So like a needle.
And this is in your belly button.
Wake. A friend came with me and they cut it out of me.
What did it feel? Did it feel like you could just feel pain there? Like
the
a
pain?
hard?
Yeah. It felt like a hard lump. Yep.
Yeah.
When you push it, it would hurt, and also it would just like kind of throb on its own sometimes.
Yeah. But in those 15 years, really quick, I want to back up. Did you have any other symptoms? I mean, yes, you still had painful periods. Did you have any GI symptoms or anything in those kind of 15 years?
Yes. The good question, because you're right. I was diagnosed with IBS. I was highly anemic.
And this is in those like 15 years where you think
that's
you
in the
feel
15
good.
years.
Right.
Yeah, where you feel good, but like, extreme stool, so either end. So then I was diagnosed with IBS. I would get stomach attacks, just like stomach pains. Mm-hmm. You're right. I always forget about that part. Never did anyone ever say the word endometriosis to me.
No, because you were thinking that those symptoms were separate from your painful period, and your painful period was just a period, and these other things were just, you were just one of those people that had stomach problems, is probably what you thought. Okay, so you get this
nugget. This nugget is like the the beginning
start
of this whole journey.
Yeah. Okay. I will let you continue on that
journey.
journey.
So he takes it out. It's an endometrioma. I go to my family doc with this information, and she says, okay, we'll send you to get a diagnostic test, the laparoscopy, with a specialist and all that jazz. And I'm like, thank you. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for this appointment, the nugget comes back. Yeah. The nugget comes back and is bigger. And this is the very interesting part. There was a pinhole in this lump that when I had a period, it would bleed. So I would not profusely, but I wear like a little Band-Aid on it during my period because it would bleed when I was menstruating.
Wow.
So yeah, so not only did it come back, now it's bleeding, and it's also painful. Not only to the touch, but just throbbing sometimes when it felt like it. I would assume maybe associated with the cycle.
Yeah.
Because that's when the blood would happen. So that's wild. So went to see that specialist, and she said, okay, so that's likely an endometrioma. We will remove that again. And then we'll go in and see if there's any endometriosis. If there is, we will cut what we can out. And there's that. So I was like, awesome.
At this point, did you research what any of that meant? Like, did you know these things were coming from potentially your painful periods, or were you just like, this is another isolated thing?
I think at this point I started to, be like, okay, what is endometriosis? Okay. But then again, like back then, like info is like, even now, like things are changing rapidly, right? But there was not that, and like you're young, I'm young, I was younger. So it's like, oh, I have better things to do than research. But
of course,
I did start to look into it.
Okay.
The stages and all that, and get informed.
And were you like, oh, this is why I had painful periods and all these stomach issues all my life? Or at this point, did you not put that all together?
Not even yet. Nope. Didn't put anything together yet. Just like, get this thing out of me. Why is it bleeding during my period?
Right.
Didn't even think about that. Right. To be honest.
No, I mean.
I was just like, oh, it's bleeding. Like I didn't associate to the cycle till later.
Right.
Because it comes back. Oh. So I go to the specialist, get my laparoscopy, so she's, I'm coming to you after recovery, or I talk to her post-op because it is a surgery. And she's like, we removed the nugget, but when I went in there, it was just too intense. And I didn't think I was skilled enough. So we didn't cut anything out and we closed you up. You have stage 4. So this was when my mother-in-law actually, because she saw how distraught I was about all of this, she's like, we're going to find the best surgeon and get you in there. And we found one in Hamilton. She found one in Hamilton. And so we had that specialist refer me to him. She had known about him, so that was good. And she referred me to him. Because he was the best of the best at the time, and he could do the job. So this is when I'm like, okay, now I've been diagnosed now with stage 4, starting to do research. What does that mean? What's happening on my insides? Like, why? What does she mean that it's too intense in there?
Right. Because no one explained to you what that meant.
No.
Right.
There's, you could have adhesions and this and that, but like, it's not.
No.
And like, also when you're in that state, like when someone's trying to tell you that you have stage 4 of anything, you're just like thinking like it's a death sentence or like it's horrible. And so you're just like in shock. So when the doctor's talking to you, you're not listening at all. Right. You're just focusing on the fact that I have stage 4 of what? Like, what do you mean? Like, that sounds so intense. So I go and see this doc, and he says, okay, yeah, we're going to do this surgery, and this major surgery. It'll take about 3 hours. Go in there, clean you up. And even then, I was still doing research about, and I didn't know much about ablation versus excision. Couldn't even tell you. I think I lost the surgery docs, but I had them, and they were wild. But I'm pretty sure it was a mixture of both. Don't quote me on that, but
okay.
So yeah, he's like, well, we'll do this surgery, we'll get it out 3 hours, and by now, like, because you meet a couple times, and by now the nugget is back for the third time.
Oh my
third time goodness. Like, it's been removed twice, it's now back
before you're waiting for this next procedure, which is how far from the one you just had?
So luckily not far. 2015, I can't tell you the month that I had the laparoscopy, but I know that it was 2015 or 14, either 14 or 15. Like, that part is murky, but moving forward is not. And then I had surgery, this major surgery in January of 2016. Okay. And then rewind, I was, like, as I said, I had the issues with the bowels, right? I said I was diagnosed with IBS. At this point, I was having extreme constipation. And so it gave me anal fissures. And I had a fissure so bad that I had to have a surgery to close up a fissure.
Oh, goodness.
Which ended up being like a fistula, and like I had a sphincterotomy. I don't even know how to say it. But I had anal surgery December 2015. And then I had this major surgery January 2016. And
at that point, you still don't even know that this belly button thing is related to the anal surgery that you had.
And the anal, that they're all endo related. Oh. I'm just like, I was constipated, and I, got fissures from straining.
Yeah.
From straining, right? Oh, this belly button thing is, now I've kind of like associated it with the endo, but I never associated that bowel surgery with endo whatsoever.
Right.
2016 January, I go in for my surgery. Oh, and I said, the nugget came back. I go in for my surgery. He's like, well, we'll take the nugget out, create a belly button for you, 3-hour surgery. When I get out of the surgery, he says, it was 5.5 hours. It was the worst case I've ever worked on. And this is 2016. So like, I know some pretty wild cases. I don't think but for him, I was one of the wildest cases he'd seen. He did a pretty good job of reconstructing my belly button. He's like, it was like it was everywhere, on your intestines, on your this, on your that, bowels. Basically, he said, before the surgery, he said when he went after the surgery, he said my reproductive organs were in a ball and plastered to the back of my body. So like, he had to free everything.
Right.
I ended up back in the hospital with a hematoma and like E. coli. Like, I think I got a bit of sepsis there. So it was a lengthy recovery. I remember that. but I the only thing I don't remember is how long after that surgery, but after that surgery, a certain amount of time later, the pain came back and was worse than it was before. Yeah. And it was starting to move into different parts of my body. So I was having shoulder pain. I think that's a bit of a CO2 issue, but still excruciating shoulder pain, pelvic pain, obviously. Pelvic pain at the end of the story ends up being like the least of my symptoms.
Yeah.
So shoulder pain, bowel issues so bad, like extreme constipation, like I had to keep regular. The nugget came back.
Oh my God.
Or maybe it wasn't the nugget, but I had pain in my belly button because I had a reconstructed type like Frankenstein navel, and there was pain again. What else? Oh gosh, it was a nightmare. Just bad pain. And then as time progressed, I had sciatic nerve pain. So I was like, why do I have this pain in my butt cheek? I was working out quite regularly at this point. You know, they would say, oh, it's your, what's that? Piriformis muscle. So like I would roll on a ball and stuff like that, or just like do sciatic nerve stretches. I should actually rewind for a second. And after that surgery, the doctor sent me right away for fertility treatment.
Okay.
Because I had just had the surgery. So all this pain was happening as I was also, like all these new symptoms were also happening as I was doing fertility treatments. So he sent me to a fertility clinic because they said, you know, now that you've been cleaned out, you need to start thinking about that if you want to start a family.
Do you still understand like the severity of endo and how this is all related at this point, or not yet?
At this point, slowly through, like now we're in 2016.
Yeah.
I'm starting to do more like, you know what I mean? Like what, like,
yeah.
because,
like what is
because
going on?
I just had this surgery. Why is this pain back? You know what I mean? I couldn't. So I was trying to figure that out. Also going through our first round of in vitro, which the result was, and we did in vitro with ICSI, which means they literally put the sperm into the egg. And we did the egg retrieval, and, you know, you create the embryos, and then the embryos didn't last the night. So you get the call the next day being like, sorry, nothing worked. And because of my situation, I was only able to produce 3 eggs. Whereas most women, you can get up like 18 to 35 eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you ready to even like have a child at this point?
Yes, we were. Luckily, we were in a position that
you were ready. Okay.
We were ready. But yeah, you're like, that's a valid question, because it, like, sometimes when women have these surgeries and they say you should try right away, they're not ready.
Yeah. Right. That's why I was curious. Like, did they just ship you over there and say, go
right?
This, you know?
They did, but at least we were ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another issue is that in Ontario, or I think across Canada, but at least in Ontario, you're covered by OHIP, by our benefits, the government, for a round of in vitro. Just not the meds, but the round. Right. And our fertility clinic said, oh, it's going to be a 3-year wait, so you might as well go private. Oh. So, you know, you want to start a family and you just have the surgery and there's pressure. So we agreed to that. And I asked many a times to this fertility clinic, is there any chance that that free round will come any sooner? And they were like, no, maybe a quarter, quarter, like
2 years,
a quarter of a year earlier, but not even possible. So when we did that first round in 2016, a year later, lo and behold, we got the call that free round. I was so upset.
I'm so sorry. That's
like
terrible.
Liars. You guys are liars. You wanted to take all our money, because it's not cheap, before you were willing to give us our, like, the free round. Terrible. I was so upset, but we tried again. This time I was like super healthy, working out,
feeling better,
doing acupuncture. Nope. I would say feeling better, but that chronic sciatic nerve pain. I would say the periods were whatever, annoying, right? Just like super heavy now because I'm not on the pill. As I said, the pelvic pain was like, you build up this
tolerance
to the pain, whereas so your pelvic pain means nothing because my sciatic nerve is constantly throbbing.
Yeah.
So did acupuncture help? I did this diet where I was just eating salmon and broccoli, and I was in the best shape of my life, the best health of my life, and we were a bit more successful. So when that free round, you have to pay for your meds, so it's more affordable, but not entirely free.
Right. And you're injecting yourself with like hormones and all of this.
Which doesn't help.
No.
So this time 5 eggs.
Okay.
Exact same thing. So the next morning, nothing lasted. It turns out low egg count and low or poor egg quality. Sperm was fine. So it's me. So you're dealing with pain, endo, exploring that journey. You're dealing with infertility, not being able to provide your husband with a spawn.
Right.
Going over like in your head, like I will never know what a child looks like for me and my husband. Like how cute would that child be?
How are you dealing with all, like, is this at this point, are you starting to like mentally hit a wall?
Oh yeah, at this point I am now
like 2 years.
At this point I'm now saying after the first in vitro, I was like, I need help. Yeah. So I luckily through a friend found a fantastic therapist who helped me through this. Meanwhile, 2016 was it? I got placed into a school where it was grade 7, 8 core French. I don't know how it is in America, but in Canada, nobody likes French if you're in core French. If you're an intermediate kid, you don't like French at all. So I go into this new position. I never even wanted to teach intermediate. And we have a group of grade 8s that are just wild, trying to get us fired, trying to like catch us in stuff. And just like, there were days I couldn't even teach. I would leave the class crying.
Like you needed that on top of everything else you had going on.
So like, I had horrible skin. I remember having so many breakouts. I'm like in pain, leaving classes crying, like in the worst job of my life. So shrink, like my therapist got me, like without my therapist, I don't know where I would be today.
Yeah.
Because she got me through all of this.
Yeah. I want to go back. You said you changed your diet and that you were doing acupuncture. Were those some of the things that were kind of helping you too? So acupuncture, did you feel that helped?
Acupuncture was fantastic. Unfortunately for us, it's not covered by our benefits. So I was paying out of pocket each week.
Yeah. Which is crazy expensive, but did you feel it was helping you? Absolutely.
Like she calls them acunaps. Like you have all the needles in you and you just are so relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely helpful. I wish I could afford it. I hope maybe in the future it'll be available in our benefits, but oh my gosh, it's fantastic. The diet changes
too, or no?
I did.
Yeah.
Like I was seeing a natural, like at one point throughout all those 2 years, I was seeing a naturopath. She had endo and she couldn't nail it down. Like I was like, no dairy, no gluten, no this, no that. I tried every diet in the book, like not like diet, but like elimination diet.
Yeah.
I've tried every one in the book. None of them help that sciatic nerve pain. Maybe here and there would make my periods better, but like nothing. By this point now, I'm like research central. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm seeing a pelvic physiotherapist that was recommended to me. I'm, using every benefit I have to figure out how I can feel better, essentially.
Right. So what happens next in your endo journey? You're not feeling well. You're going through this IVF. Now what?
Now this pain is chronic. The pain in my sciatic nerve is chronic. Not like Advil doesn't help. Tylenol doesn't help. Heating pad gives me relief, but I have to be sitting, like, so I can't be doing that at work.
Right.
And I'm just done. So I go back to that surgeon and I say, listen, I have pain again. Like, what do you recommend? What are we doing here? And he says, oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this drug called Lupron. And we're going to add another drug called Vizan. And I say, okay, cool. And I go fill those prescriptions. But then I'm doing research because, like, I need to know what's happening here. What saved me was, he said, so the Lupron is a shot.
Yeah.
He said that the pharmacist could give me the shot. But when I went to the pharmacist, they're like, we don't give you the shot.
Yeah.
It's your family. Oh, by now I've moved to Hamilton. I have a new family doctor or whatever. I call my family doctor. They said, you have to give me, like, the pharmacist said, my surgeon said the pharmacist said, you have to give me this shot. And she's like, we don't know what that is. We're not going to give it to you. You have to have your surgeon message us, or you need to go to the surgeon. So it was like a runaround. And I already had this shot. I think the fact that they were bouncing me around and was a blessing, because as they were all saying, I don't do that, I was able to do more research. And then I realized I'm not taking that shot.
Phew.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was like a blessing.
Yeah.
But this Vizan thing, I'll try it out. Because I'm like, it's kind of like birth control, not really in its effects. So I know that progesterone is not a birth control method. But so I was like, I'm going to take this. And you know what? I had some relief with the Vizan for about 5 months.
Good.
But then the pain came back, obviously.
Of course. Yep.
And it was that pesky sciatic nerve pain.
Which is, if people who are listening, like, or watching, nerve pain is unruly. Like, I can deal with the endo pain compared to nerve pain. There's just no relief. Like, it just won't, it's like lightning. It won't stop.
No relief at all.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, like, such bad pain. Like, I'm crying.
Yeah.
So luckily I met a gem of a human who is my pelvic physiotherapist. She had another client with endo who had surgery with us, this new surgeon from Brazil who had moved to Canada and is now doing surgeries here. Now, he's a nerve and urology specialist for endo. And I was like, okay. So first of all, when I had to get a referral to go back to see the first doc. It took about 6 months to see him, for him to say, take this Lupron. It took 8 months for me to see that other new doctor.
Right.
Because he had gained popularity, the new nerve one.
Yeah, the nerve one.
Yeah. And by now, like, I've gone to the first surgeon, just trying to give me drugs. My family doctor, who has no idea what to do with me.
Right.
Naturopath, no idea what to do with me. Pelvic physiotherapist, she's doing her best.
Yeah.
But nobody can help me. I go and see this doctor from Brazil. He does an exam. He goes vaginally and anally to do an exam.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as he's done that, he's like, oh, it's this, that, and the next, and this, that, and the next. We're going to have a surgery next June. So I was like almost crying. I was so happy that someone finally could tell me what was up, and like to know that I wasn't, losing my mind, that this is how I felt.
Yeah.
He used, like weird words like your pudendal nerve and blah, blah. I don't know.
Right.
Once again, you're in a blackout state because you're like so happy that someone's finally listening to you. So you just kind of black out and you don't hear the rest. I really need to take like a voice recorder when I go to doctors.
That's what I do.
I'm going to.
It's a good tip for everybody who's listening to take your phone. There's an app on there. Just record.
Yeah, like I'm always like too embarrassed, but no, I'm not going to be embarrassed anymore because you know what? I have a horrible memory.
Out. Yeah,
and B, I always black out. And C, I don't know what these words mean.
Right, you got to Google them when you get home.
Right. So,
and you
finally
like he seems like you're like finally someone who gets it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's gonna help me.
Yeah.
And that sends me for tests. He sent me for an MRI. He sent me for this. I had to do this like urology test where they filled my bladder to see like how easily I emptied it. Found out like the whole like I used to notice that when I went to the washroom, I would pee and then 5 minutes later I'd have to pee again. And doing that test like kind of confirmed that like I had trouble emptying my bladder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it all, like every like thing I've experienced, like started to make sense.
Yeah.
MRI, he could see so much. He's like, I see this, that, and the next. And, you know, he's like, I see the bowels. He was the first one to say, hey, you have endo all over your bowels. I told my family doctor, send me for a colonoscopy. Something's not right.
Yeah.
She sent me for a consult and the doctor refused to give me one. This doctor sent me and I got one. Yes, it came back clear.
Right.
Like
because
further, like spoiler alert, it was on the outside of my bowels.
Right.
But at least he's sending me to these things and entertaining the idea that, you know what I mean? Like I'm slowly becoming my own doctor.
Yeah. No.
If I wouldn't have advocated for myself, I would be on Lupron right now. Who knows doing what?
I know. And that's a couple really good points. You talked about MRI and it showed endo. A lot of people don't even know you can get one. I didn't know that until 2 years ago. But also the caveat with saying that though is sometimes you have endo and it doesn't show up on the MRI too. So Don't be discouraged if you hear that. And then advocating for yourself, which is something I talk about all the time on the podcast. I know people get frustrated with that and they don't feel that they should have to do that, but unfortunately we have to. I hope these types of conversations will change that in the future. But for now, like, you always have to, if something feels wrong in your gut, you're probably right. And you need to keep trying to find a doctor who will listen to you.
Totally agree. Like I couldn't even imagine like, and it's, and like you said, like you shouldn't have to, but you have to. There's just not enough. I don't know if it's not enough research, not enough specialists.
It's all of it.
It's just
awareness.
Yeah. And like, if you're not happy with an answer, you need to find a different answer.
Yes. And Google and research and talk to other people in the endo community to figure out what worked for, may work for them, might not work for you, but at least get some feedback before you jump into something.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then you have this surgery planned.
Yes. So he says, you're going to have your surgery in June.
And what year is this now?
Now we're
2018.
My surgery last year.
2019.
Yeah, 2019.
June 19. Right.
So June. Well, I met him in December of 2018.
Yeah.
He says, we're looking at June 2019.
Okay.
But after all these tests, he's like, sorry to tell you, but we can't do June. Because I had a June date even picked, half-day surgery. But then after all of the MRIs and the urology stuff, he says, nope, you know what? We're going to need a bowel surgeon. It's going to have to be the fall, and it's going to be a full-day surgery because there's 2 surgeons that have to be there. And so whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I'm in your hands. I'm feel good.
Yeah.
So then November 2019 comes. I think he had scheduled 7 hours for my surgery. Also, he said that, I want to take your uterus, because I did have adeno. And I was on the fence. He's like, you can think about it all the way up until surgery. And I was like, cool. Did as much research as I can. Like, everyone's different and there's lots of different research. But I had come to the decision that, you know what, take it. So that morning I was like, yep, you can go.
Because this is now your 3rd surgery. Well,
this is my too many.
Yeah.
3rd endo. But then, technically that bowel surgery, anal surgery was related.
Yes.
Okay. He's like, you're going to take it. And he's like, he scheduled 7 hours. uterus I agreed to. He said, he's like, you're going to lose your navel. He's like, we have to take it completely out. He's like, I'm going to go around it big so that there's no way it comes back. Is that all he said before surgery? Yeah. It's a possible bowel resection. I had met with the stoma nurse because you might have an ostomy bag. I knew what was possibly going to happen.
Yeah.
But then I wake up and they tell me that my surgery was 17 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And so you're in the recovery unit, and like my mother-in-law had come with me, and like at this point when I finally came to, it was like 1 a.m. I had gone in at like 8 for like a 9 o'clock surgery. And my mother-in-law, like, they're like, oh, she just went home. She stayed right until the end, they said, because she's like, she had to make sure I got out. 17 hours. So I had to kind of like swallow that, and get off being drowsy, right? Like now I'm in recovery. The surgical note says that after that surgery, I was like, as soon as I'm ready, I'm going home. But I didn't end up going home for 23 days.
Oh my goodness.
So here's where things get crazy. So I had this 17-hour surgery. When I finally am able to understand, well, I wasn't fully understanding anything until I was out of the hospital reading the surgical notes. But they had told me that they went in, they had like lots of surgeons. They would take turns, like half an hour on, whatever.
Right.
I ended up having the main surgeon, the bowel surgeon, and a urologist, because he had to. So this doctor it was on my bowels, on my ureters, bladder. What else organs do you have in there? Oh, for sure, the uterus had to come out. I have photos. Looked like it was burnt to a crisp.
Right.
So he would have taken that out anyway. It was on my pelvic floor. What else do you have in there?
Probably appendix. Do they take your appendix or no?
No, didn't take my appendix. Didn't really talk about my appendix.
Diaphragm?
Didn't talk about that. Oh, by the way, back in the day, I was having what I thought was diaphragm symptoms as well at one point, but they kind of like came and went. He said it was everywhere. They removed.
Keep your ovaries?
Oh, he kept my ovaries. I think he said, but I moved them. And he said the bowel surgeon had to take a foot of my bowel. So I did have a bag. So at this point, and then the urologist had to come because he had to take so much endo off my ureters that I had to have stents on both of them. And it turns out my mother-in-law told me that she ran into the doctor when she was waiting for me, and that he showed her pictures of like my uterus and my bowels, and told her that like, if I wouldn't have had this kind of surgery, it would have spread to my kidneys and killed me. So like, just wild.
Yeah.
So I'm post-op with my ostomy bag and a catheter after anyone would have a catheter after surgery. But when they took my first it was a bowel issue. So I ended up having a bowel leak. How did they find that out? This was so recent.
You're probably sick. Very sick.
Yeah, I was very sick. I was at one point, I had gone to the washroom in bed, but I had an ostomy bag. I remember waking up and just feeling something, and I was like, that's impossible. I have an ostomy bag. Like, what? Lo and behold, I had gone to the washroom and I was vomiting.
Yeah.
So turns out I had a bowel leak.
Oh my goodness.
So there was that. And then we had a CT and it showed. And then when they took my catheter out, I didn't pee for 8 hours. So they put that back in, and I had some tests done. It turns out that I had a ureter leak, which all of these things they kind of like suspected would happen Obviously they didn't say to me, oh, this could happen, but
Right.
it is in the surgical report. Like when I look back, like they thought that like these are the possible things, but they also wrote, she will be going home today. So I had every possible complication that surgery allowed. Ended up being there for 23 days. Oh, I also had air in my lung, but that kind of went away. They did a procedure, but it's a teaching hospital and the person didn't do it properly. So yeah, that happened too. But bowel leak, they were like, there's nothing really we can do about it right now. Like I had like what's the scary name, like disease control on my case. Like I was on antibiotics up the wazoo. This disease control woman was there, like infectious diseases was there like every day. And then, but at the end of it, pardon my French, but she was like, you can't clean shit, right? Because I like having sepsis, and she's like, you can't, not enough antibiotics can clean up poop. So I, they just stopped my antibiotics. So at this point, I have an ostomy bag. I have a catheter. And then while I'm in there, they give me a butt drain. There's no fancy word for it. I think they use the word precarious drain. Okay. So I have a drain in my butt cheek that's draining the bowel leak. And then they also gave me a nephrostomy tube because that ureter is leaking urine into my body. So I need a nephrostomy tube, which is a tube in your kidney that directs your urine straight to a bag. So I have 3 bags.
Oh my God.
4 bags. And miraculously after 23 days, they say I can go home, but with all the bags.
No. All of them?
All of them. All the bags. So you can only imagine. But they're like, you're going to have a nurse. You're going to have a nurse that comes every 3 days. You're going to have an ostomy nurse. So I had 2 nurses in the beginning. I can't lift, push, pull. I have, what age was he at the time? Oh, was he, like 1-year-old, essentially. I have an infant. While I was in the hospital, luckily my in-laws are saints. They would watch Ellis during the week because my husband was on like shift work. And then my husband would bring my son home for the weekend. So he's all over the place. My surgery is in Toronto. We live in Hamilton, so it's an hour commute. So I only saw my son 4 times because to bring him all the way to the city, it's, you have an hour drive there, an hour drive home, a little visit hospital, not the best place to have a baby. So that was hard. I remember the first time he came to visit, like he didn't even look like him. Like he had grown so much. So I'm home. Luckily, as I said, angel of a woman, my mother-in-law is, she was here every day at 6 a.m. because I can't even lift my child out of the crib. Right. She was with me for because I had to be 6 to 8 weeks post-op that I could even consider lifting, pushing, pulling. I couldn't even walk with my son. I could walk, but I can't push the stroller. Right. So I had a lot of help. And while I was in the hospital, what got me through, I would write on my whiteboard goals for the day, to walk 4 laps or to drink 2 things of water, or I had my son's name Ellis written on my board. Without that, I would have sunk. Very I would have been defeated. 4 bags and you know what I mean? Felt great, no pain, but I have all these bags.
Yeah. So where now? So that was 6 months ago.
November 13th will always be a day
you'll never forget.
Remember. Yeah. So I would say about 4 months post-op. I went I've been to many a follow-up, but 4 months post-op was my favorite because my doctor was the surgeon that did my surgery was able to the butt drain, as I called it, was not draining anything. So he took that one out. Oh, so I was a quarter of bags lighter. So I had 3 bags now.
Victory. That's a huge victory.
It was a huge victory because I couldn't like be comfortable. I couldn't sit on my own couch comfortable because it was literally at the top right, like everything was on the right side. Top right of my butt crack was this drain, and it was painful. I couldn't drive. That was another thing that was tricky. I couldn't drive with that. I couldn't do much with that. So that uncomfortable thing was gone. 1 bag gone. I felt so happy about that. But the more I went to follow-ups, the more it made sense. And the more like I read the surgical report, it turns out my right ureter is hanging on by a thread. It's hanging out. It's so thin that it looks like it's detached. So now urology has kind of moved my case to a bladder surgeon, because I'm going to have another surgery where the ureter is reconnected to my bladder. Also need to have another surgery where the bowel is repaired, because it's still kind of like leak. No, like the bowel leak, like because I think the tissue was so thin when they removed that foot of bowel that it was leaking. But the bowel surgeon was like, we want to wait about 9 months post-op, which would bring us to August of this upcoming summer. And they've said, we'll do it all together. So the bladder surgeon would be involved, bowel surgeon, and then the main surgeon, the main endo surgeon would be involved as well, because I also ended up with a fistula between my vagina and bowels, somewhere in there. I just call it a black hole. It's a black hole. It makes me TMI, but makes me leak. So and there's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes I have to wear a Depends. Sometimes I'm like, I have no uterus, but I have to buy pads, because sometimes I just will be sitting here and I'll just feel a gush. And it's like, it looks like the kidney liquid. So it's not blood. It's like a clear kind of urine, but it's not urine. Well, technically it is, but not like I don't think it's from my catheter. Yeah. It's obviously from that right side. So, so pre-COVID, I'm scared, there was no date yet, but summer 2020, 1 more surgery. And I have to keep all of these bags until that surgery.
So you still have the 3 bags?
I still have the 3 bags. And meanwhile, I would say last December and March, 2 visits to the ER, because I've had such bad kidney pain that it's like 10 out of 10. And like I always said to myself, if I'm ever in so much pain that I'm crying, that means you need to go to the hospital. Yeah. So both times it turns out it was they said UTI. So I was put on antibiotics for 10 days both times. But then the last episode, March 13th. So this is like at the very, this is when COVID first was like
just coming.
The lockdown. I think the lockdown was the 13th, like when we closed down in Ontario. Yeah. I was there the 14th. But then I was on the antibiotics for the 10 days, but then 10 days later, the kidney pain came back. So I just called my family doctor, because I didn't want to go to the ER again, because now COVID's at its height. Peak, I don't want to be there. No. So I call her, and because my home nurse was like, why don't you just call your family doctor? Maybe she can just get you more antibiotics. But the pharmacist, she did that, but the pharmacist like, you're going to grow an antibody to these because you were just on them 10 days ago, but here you go, but you need to figure it out. So that's when I called my bladder surgeon. And now I've just recently, first of all, I had to get a tube change. It's been almost 5 months and I hadn't had my nephrostomy tube change. So I just did that. I just had a CT and I just had an ultrasound, and I'm waiting for results from that. From the ultrasound, they saw kind of like a hematoma happening, maybe dried blood though. Okay. So they sent me for a CT, which I'm like, I have to call them today and see if they're usually pretty good at getting back to me, but I need to call them today to see what's up. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. Because the kidney pain's still here post nephrostomy tube change. So something's not right now. And I'm wondering if maybe it'll make my situation more urgent, or if, potentially my surgery in the summer is going to get pushed to the fall or later. just because now all these surgeries are getting pushed.
I know.
But the pain, and I'm May 1st back to work as a teacher. We're teaching virtually here.
Okay.
So I was able to do that. Had we gone back in the building,
No.
I would be on a medical leave.
Yeah.
Because I can't, like, all these bags, like, there's no way. And like, if I stand for more than like half an hour, my kidney and lower back starts hurting.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of in limbo, but with kidney pain.
How is your other pain?
But, well, up until I would say a month ago, no pelvic pain, no pain at all. The sciatic nerve pain is gone. Lately I don't know if it's like, cause I've been reintroducing new foods, because with the ostomy, you have to have a very strict diet for the first 6 weeks. And then slowly you can like start adding like, you know, like broccoli is pretty gassy, stuff like that. Like I've been having a bit of pelvic pain. I don't know if it's ovulation or foods that I'm eating, or it's not comfortable. It's not constant, but it's there, which kind of scares me just because like he did a good clean. But no sciatic nerve pain, which was the worst pain.
Yeah, no,
you have to like pick your battles.
I mean, right. Look, with endo, none of us are ever going to be 100%. I hate to say that, but it's just true. And
that's the thing.
It's a chronic thing. So we just have to figure out the best way to manage it and like maintain as much daily life as we can and reduced pain.
Yeah. And like I would have these plans, like after my surgery, I was going to eat so clean, endo diet. But then I have this ostomy bag where I have to like, I'm told to only eat like white flour, no whole
easy to digest,
grains, like easy to digest, like cheese, like chips, like not at all what I planned on eating after like post surgery. Can't exercise, like I can't do anything. So I just need these bags gone so I can like start the next chapter of this endo journey, whatever it looks like.
Well, you're incredible. I mean, how are you feeling like mental health wise?
So mental health wise,
this was a lot.
It's a lot. I'm a pretty positive person, but obviously I've had days where I'm just like, I'm over it. Like I'll just be crying, like, and my husband is just like, how can I help you? And I'm like, ah. But I'm very like self-aware. Like my therapist unfortunately moved out west. So she did recommend some new people, but I haven't accessed them yet. I haven't felt that because like before this, like me and her, we kind of like, before she left, like we kind of like closed the book. Yeah. Like I would still see her, but like I was going weekly, but then now I could go like monthly and we just check in, and she was like, you're doing great. Yeah. So I'm very self-aware. So I've, sometimes I've been like, okay, do I need to, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Just because COVID's here, right? Like, I'm going to find another shrink because I think it's so necessary. Like no matter who you are, there's always things you can work on. Like not to mention all this drama. I have childhood trauma. So I have, but I'm self-aware and I know when I need it. So mental health wise, highs and lows. Yeah. I am excited to get back to talking to a therapist, but for now I'm okay. It's just like now with this, this added, like my son and I, we were always out of this house, like having to now be inside a house, working, watching him, kidney pain. I have a dog who's high needs. She is very needy. So it's just a lot. And I'm by myself. Usually I have grandma to help, and because my husband works. So it's been hard, but I'm keeping my head up.
Good. You've really, I mean, I can tell you exude positivity and you've been through a lot. So that's awesome. So obviously you're sharing this and you've been through a lot, and there's a lot of people that are listening that are at the beginning of their journey or their middle of their journey, or, maybe even in a similar state as you. Any tips or tricks you want to provide for anything that you've been through?
For sure. Advocate. You have to, until you get the answers that you want, essentially, you need to fight. Yeah. Don't stop fighting, right? A lot of people just, they're like, okay, whatever. You're in so much pain that you're like, sure, I'll take that Lupron, whatever helps. Yeah. Please don't do that. Right. do your research. It's hard. Like, it's still, you know, it's not, there's tons of information now. However, it's hard to navigate that, right? It's hard to navigate, you know, what's like, if a doctor's telling you to take something, it should be good for you, but that's not the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's much different in the States too, right? Because there's no healthcare.
Similar. Yeah, right.
So I just can't even imagine. So advocate for yourself. I don't know how prevalent pelvic physiotherapy is in the States, but that helped me a lot.
That's good.
My woman's a gem, so like I just love her anyway. But like I think that she has done. She unblocked. I had blocked fallopian tubes before my first round of IVF, and she unblocked one of them.
That's great.
Like, they're pretty cool, and like I'm excited for like when I don't have a catheter, that she can like go in and she like make sure like my ovaries are moving and stuff like that. It's wild what they can do. So pelvic physiotherapy is key if you have access to it, right? It's also expensive, but I'm covered with my benefits. I don't have diet because, you know what, I've tried all the diet stuff.
We talk about it all the time.
But definitely, you know, try to see what works for you in terms of what you put into your body. Just don't, I know I find like I'm on a lot of like Facebook groups, and there's just so many women that just like they've had enough, and they almost like they give up, and they're, you know, no longer going to work and just like letting it take over. And I know how you're feeling. I know how much the pain, how much it hurts, and how the pain affects your mental health, but just fight and don't let it win. I know it's like easier said than done, but I just see so many people that just let it kind of like take them down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let it take
great. Those are great tips for sure. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No.
Well, you are a true warrior, and I know everyone listening to this is going to feel the same way. And we really, really appreciate you sharing and being so vulnerable and telling us your story. And I look forward to getting a recap in a couple months when you're bagless.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It will be the most glorious day to be bagless.
Yeah, you're a hero. Absolute hero.
Thank you. Whatever. As I said before, it's like, as long as if I share my story and it helps give hope to at least one person, I've done my job. Right.
It will.
And that's another thing. Like, it's important. Like, I find Instagram is such a great place to be an endo warrior, because there are so many endo warriors on Instagram, and like how I randomly find people like you, and I've made friends with people in different states and around the world that I've not even met in person. And we're, you know, talking back and forth all the time. So it's really helpful to have people to talk to that are going through the same things as you.
Yes.
Another example is there was an endo group. It turns out that only 2 of us ended up going to meet. Like, there was a meetup, but only 2 of us showed up. And like, now I like have this new friend like that lives in in the same city as me, that's going through the same thing. So like, when I'm having a flare up or something, I could just call her and we can commiserate. You know what I mean? Yeah. So finding your people is important.
I agree. Having a community, because you may have a best friend, but they don't understand what you're going through. And this disease is really tough. And you need to be able to have those conversations with people who get it, that they're not going to look at you and like, gosh, she doesn't feel good again. You know, like, these people understand because they're going through the same thing. And that's actually a really good plug I started a Facebook group specifically for this podcast. So I'm inviting all the guests to come on so they can talk further. I'm kind of calling it like the after show, because people have questions after they listen to this. So it's a place where we can just kind of talk about the episodes after. It'll be linked in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, it's linked below. But I'd love for all of you to join the community, and Cass, you too, because I'm sure people have questions for you, but then you can keep us updated there too.
Yes, I'm so into it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. All right. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.